Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the ceremony to honor the 2022 Living Treasures. My name is Kyle Wheeler, and I'm currently the chair of the board of the Living Treasures. I would like to acknowledge the other board members present. They're listed in the program on the inside fold. And if any of them are here today, maybe they could just take a stand up for a minute. There's one, and oh, there's a few over there standing out there in the other room. But anyway, it's through their hard work that we get this stuff done. In addition to the board, I would like to acknowledge the work of Jim O'Donnell, who took the portraits, and to Jean Gindrow of Pack 8, who films the ceremony, and she's right back here. They do this work as volunteers, and we also appreciate the efforts of Bernadette Loretson, the executive director of the Senior Centers, and she keeps us on our toes as far as COVID-safe practices, and she helps us with a variety of other tasks. There's 4 chairs over here, and there's a few chairs over here. Okay, well, one of the joys of the work I do on this board is interviewing the treasures and preparing the write-ups, which I hope most of you have the time to read. If you haven't, there are extra copies, thanks to the Daily Post for publishing them, and they're on the table out there in the anteroom where the programs are also located. I don't intend to talk very much because I have a few allergy kind of issues, and I don't want to start coughing, but I hope that most of you who know these people a lot better than I do and have known them over many years have some antidotes that you're going to want to share with us today. And we like to start the ceremony right around 2 and end at 3:30. So sometimes that means I have to be kind of the tough person and cut people off if they start talking too long. And I don't hesitate to do that, okay? So anyway, we're going to start off with Coke Young Mcclanahan. And Coke Young and Mike and their first daughter, Jenny, moved to Los Alamos in 1975, and she started making a difference right away. Their second daughter, Elizabeth, was born in Los Alamos. There are so many things about Coke Young that I admire, but maybe what strikes me the most is her commitment to a sustainable lifestyle. She strives to reduce her impact on the environment and freely shares her knowledge. She truly lives her values. She is also first to acknowledge that if you don't have support from other people, your passions can't flower. Many of you know Coke Young much better than I do. So what I would like to do is invite some of you who want to share a few words about her to come to the front. There's a couple chairs over here, and there's a couple chairs over here, and take a seat so we can keep things moving fairly quickly. And I'd like you to just make some remarks. Try to keep them, if you can, to about 3 minutes, and speak into the mic. This mic is for all of you, and this mic is for Jean, so it gets picked up on the tape, which will be shown on Pack 8 later. And if you're wearing a mask, please remove it while you're speaking. Okay, so whoever wants to make a few comments about Coke Young, come on up. You need to speak into this and see if you can.
Okay. Can everybody hear me all right? I never know about these microphones. Pardon me, I got to get out my notes here.
I can hold something for you if you want me to.
I'm afraid that I may be repeating some things that Kyle said, some things that are in the program, but it's here, and I'll cut out what I think I can, all right? Anyway, my name is Joyce Nichols, and although I compiled and submitted the application to the Living Treasures Selection Committee for Coke Young, there were many of her friends and acquaintances that were offered a lot of support and contributions. And you all are here, and you know who you are, and thank you.
Did that go off? Yeah.
It sounds like it did, didn't it?
Let's see. I hope we didn't. Try that.
How's this? I can even hear feedback myself. But anyway, I thank all you who helped me with this. But I really want to give a special thanks to Coke Young's husband, Mike Mcclanahan. It would not have happened. Oh, this keeps going off.
I wonder what's happening.
Yeah, it's back. But anyway, Mike, thank you so much for helping me get my facts straight on all of this. Anyway, well, why is going on here?
Okay, let's try it. Okay. We have this other one, but I don't know where the on-off switch is for this one.
Okay, where are you taking?
Where's my technical expert? Ron, let's see. Could you see if the Fuller Lodge person is sitting out there?
That's working.
Yeah, it is right
I can-
now.
Oh, that's the same one.
If I really shout, I maybe can make this happen. Anyway, this is kind of a repeat, but you're going to have to just listen to it. As many of you know by now, Coke Young was born in Malaysia in the early 1940s. It's gone out again, hasn't it? Yeah. Okay.
We can hear you great.
Can you? All right. Her husband, Mike, is originally from South Africa, but was teaching science in the school in Malaysia that Coke Young was attending. They were married in Malaysia.
Joyce, let's give this one a try.
How about this, guys? Ladies. They were married in Malaysia, spent some time in the United Kingdom, and arrived in the United States in 1972. First to Davis, California, and then arrived here in Los Alamos in 1975. It is hard to be brief about all of Coke Young's accomplishments, but I'm going to try. The first probably is giving birth to her two daughters, Jenny and Elizabeth, which are both here. I saw them come in. And then the other highlight I want to just share that Coke Young and Mike became U.S. citizens in 1984. And by my calculations, that took 12 years. And as you all know, given our times, that is an accomplishment. As Kyler said, when Coke Young first arrived in Los Alamos, is this still, yeah, her children were tiny. So her focus centered on small children. She started the Homecomers Playgroup. Shortly after that, she started the International Friendship Club, matching visiting scholars with those families who taught English as a second language. Another exciting thing, at least I find it exciting, since there were no Asian restaurants in Los Alamos at the time, and there was no place to buy ingredients for her Asian cooking classes, Coke Young went to the manager of Safeway, which is now our Smith's Marketplace, And she persuaded him to start carrying the ingredients she needed. And you can all thank her for that. Okay, we all know that Koh Young is known for her Tai Chi classes. She once had told me that she did this, she learned Tai Chi from her father, and she did this in part to continue to honor him. We also know Koh Young loves music. She plays many instruments, but one of the things I learned is that she was able to perform at the Greer Garson Theatre one time with the Scottish Dance Performance Group. Koh Young is known for giving a helping hand to all those in need, and perhaps that is due to the hard times her family had endured in post-World War II. We all know that Koh Young now great devotion is healthy and sustainable living, but I will let others address that. I could share so much more with her, but I want to close by just a poem that Koh Young wrote. I find it very meaningful, and I hope you do too. It goes like this. I am but a drop of water. Alone I would disappear. Dried up by the scorching sun, sucked up by the dry, thirsty earth. But together we can wear out stones, carve out grand canyons, and make streams and rivers, and find our way to the sea. Thank you, Koh Young, for being you.
Thank you, Joyce. I thought I saw Stephanie sitting over here.
What?
Okay, Stephanie, you're up next then. And after that, Koh Young's daughter. Speaking to this mic too.
Thank you. Okay, I will try to do that. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie. I knew Koh Young. I have known her for as long as I lived in Los Alamos because we were both members of the same church. And Joyce, I love the water quote. I think that really does exemplify someone with like a quiet persistence like Koh Young has, but like making great things happen. The things I wanted to share about Koh Young, and she did when she invited us all to this, she said, and don't embarrass me. So I have to like pick and choose what I want to share and not share because we do have some stories together. Something was mentioned about her teaching her Tai Chi classes, and if you've been in her Tai Chi classes, it's incredible to watch this woman like crouch on one foot all the way almost to the ground and not lose her balance. It's a skill that she has developed over, I think, a lifetime of learning. And the name that she taught us to call our Tai Chi teacher is Sifu, and that is a teacher that has, mastered great skill. And I believe in so many ways that name exemplifies Koh Young, so whenever I address her, that is the way I address her. And then the other thing I wanted to share is around her sustainability efforts. She once challenged us at our church to save 30 days of our trash. If you've never tried that before, it's incredibly difficult and disgusting. And I almost thought my family was going to kick me out of the house when we had like 30, and the whole idea is to really get a sense of all of the things that we use and don't reuse and discard and don't compost, right? That's kind of, it's supposed to give you like a baseline of what your everyday sort of use of disposable products is. But that is something that has always stuck with me. And then finally, very recently, Koh Young spearheaded an incredible campaign to help folks up north who had experienced devastating fires replant and rebuild by making seed balls and doing that with the children, youth of our community. So Kook Young, I am incredibly honored to be here to help honor you. You have really impacted my life. You've impacted my perspectives on so many things, and I'm just so lucky to know you and have been had a relationship with you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jenny Gaffney. I'm daughter number 1, and I was looking through the paper and having all these fond memories. I remember I was in morning kindergarten, and she worked out her Chinese cooking classes so that they would be done right when I got home from school, and I do have fond memories of eating Chinese food when I got home with a whole bunch of happy, proud students. And I have fond memories of playing around when she was teaching Tai Chi to lots of people, and like, I think ducking between people's hands, and I don't know how they weren't annoyed at me. And sometimes kind of copying and following, but not really having very much attention span, and then running off and doing something else. I remember when my mom told me that Mary Zemak was a living treasure of Los Alamos, and what an incredible honor that was. And I remember looking up to Mary Zemak and going to her yard and seeing all the permaculture things there and learning from her and thinking, that's just amazing that somebody could do that with their life. And I'm so proud today to find out that my mom, who had all these incredible passions that I kept rolling my eyes at as I grew up, has really helped Los Alamos and helped so many people in such a profound way. And I'm just so proud of you today, Mom.
Are there some other people who'd like to make a comment or two about Kook Young? Oh, you want to say something now?
Oh, you want to wait?
Not, I thought maybe at the end.
Okay,
I mean, not at the end, but when we're done, other people have done.
okay, good.
Does anybody else? Well, come on up front. Don't hesitate, just get yourself up here. Is that you, Susan?
Yeah.
Hi. Hi. Here, speak into this mic too,
Oh, okay.
because that's for the tape.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have prepared remarks, but I just want to highlight one of the things that I actually worked a little bit with Kook Young on, and that guy is pantry. And so this is just typical of how Kook Young works. She just quietly mentions to people on the board that, oh, you know, we should have this thing that where people can exchange food and bring extra food to. And so like we were like, okay. And then like we get on with other business, and then she's like, well, we really should look at this. And she kept on mentioning it, and then suddenly she finds people to work with, you know, a woman who in our church who is who knows a lot about bear-proof containers, and all of a sudden this thing happened. And an artist in arts that she knows that suddenly put these beautiful pictures on this receptacle and then suddenly we have a refrigerator for people to put things. And suddenly, so we now have this active thing where people can come and get food if they need it, drop off food if they have extra. And this is all because of this quiet, no drama person. This is no drama ever. And I just want to say, I am totally amazed. We have this wonderful functioning thing that she continues to maintain. And so this is what I think. I mean, we have people, I mean, all of us have this sphere for our family. And then some of us, you know, increase this sphere to our neighbors and to maybe our church. But she has this constantly bigger and bigger sphere that just includes everyone in the community. And if, you know, we all did things like this, I just think, you know, we would all be so much better. So I'm always thinking, okay, bigger sphere. And thank you, Kook Young, for all that you do and this beautiful thing that we have to share food in our community.
Talking to this too, right? Okay, hello, I'm Ella Gaffney. I am one of the grandchildren of Kok Young. I don't have any super touching poems or anything like that. I do have a lot of small memories that I wanted to mention. Grandma has been like a third parent to me for almost all of my life. If my parents were ever busy, which they oftentimes were, she was immediately there to take care of me when I was little. As a result, I learned a lot about Grandma's values. I learned a lot about how much she cares about the environment and how to help with that. Nowadays, I really enjoy actually making sure to help rather than just talk about the situation. And it's because of my grandmother that I make such a point to pick up trash whenever I see it. It's because of my grandmother that I find it kind of enjoyable to do so nowadays, because she made it an enjoyable experience when I was little. It's also because of my grandmother that I'm a part of the church as much as I am, and without her, I would not have had my first job, would not have met nearly as many people, and I would not be working with children nearly as much. I also think it's because of my grandma that my grandpa actually knows how to make rice. Without her, he never would have.
Is there anybody else who'd like to share a memory of Kok Young? Okay then, Kok Young, would you come up, please? Before I give you a chance to speak, I want to just show you a few things that we have, and I need to show them to the audience too. Would you mind just holding this for a minute? Okay. These are the portraits that Jim O'Donnell took, and they're going to be hanging soon in the Senior Center. The Enterprise Bank has asked us to move the portraits from their location. So what we're going to do is put them at the Senior Center. So if anytime you want to look at these, come by and just take a look. They'll be upstairs where the pool tables and things like that are. And let me have you hold that again. We have a copy of the picture for you, and a certificate showing that you really and truly are a living treasure. Nice. And you might have noticed some people walking around today with a pendant on. Well, now you have a pendant too. And these are made in Santa Fe by an artist. And we try to have a luncheon at the Senior Center every year. I don't know if it's going to happen this year because it's going to remodel the kitchen. But if it does, your lunch is free, and along with one other person you bring, and you just need to wear this, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and make a few remarks, and I'll get out of your way.
Thank you. Thank you all for the honor and the recognition. Let me ask you a well-known philosophical question. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it still make a sound? What's your answer? Yes? No? Maybe? And if you are like my granddaughter, Lacey, you will say, it depends. All of us here are treasures in one way or another. Since the day we were born, the Chinese character for baby is bao bao. It literally means treasure. We double the word for emphasis, bao bao, treasure, treasure. So, we are all treasure to someone from the very day we were born. Let's do a simple exercise, and you might want to close your eyes if that helps you. Reflect upon what brings you joy. What makes you happy? What makes you feel fulfillment and gives you a sense of accomplishment? What makes you tick? Your job? Your hobbies? Your passions? How have they enriched your life and the lives of others around you? How have they improved the quality of life in our community? Are you not a treasure? It doesn't have to be something big and amazing. Small acts of kindness and consideration all contribute to the welfare of this community. It can be something as simple as picking up trash on your walks. Simple acts can be amazing. When my granddaughter Ella was a toddler, we would take her out for walks in the neighborhood. We had a folding umbrella stroller for when she got too tired to walk. And when she saw a piece of trash, she would jump out of her stroller and say with excitement, "Oh, trash!" and would pick it out to bring back to deposit in our trash can, as if it were a piece of treasure. And she still does that. We are all treasures. But if no one nominated you for the Living Treasure Award, are you still treasures? Yes, we are. I want to thank my friends who nominated me for this award. It has been a long process, and the work involved has been thorough, more thorough than the FBI clearance I got when I signed up for the Big Brother, Big Sister luncheon program. I want to thank, first of all, Joyce Nicole for taking the initiative and getting others to write letters of support. Some of them are here today. Sue Watt, wave. Joyce South, wave. And Terry Berry, wave. Thank you. And we also, others who are not here today. I also want to thank Ginny White for her editorial contributions to the letters of recommendation. And thank you again.
Thank you. I have so much respect for Sharon Snyder. Okay, thank you. Because I used to work on producing publications. Whenever people say, "Oh, you should write a book," I think, they don't have any idea what they're talking about. Writing a book and getting it published is a really difficult thing to do. Sharon knows this, right, Sharon? Not only has she written a fabulous book about Peggy Pond Church, she has edited and overseen the production of numerous books for the Historical Society, all as a volunteer for many years. That's hard work, and I truly admire her for what she has done. She's made a commitment to the history of the Pirato Plateau and sharing what she knows with other people, either through her own work or through the work of others. So what I'd like to do now is invite some of you people who know Sharon to come up front and share a few comments that you have about her. And go ahead and fill these seats so that we can move things right along. Okay, somebody's going to start. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Wendy Hoffman. I've lived in Los Alamos for 50 years, so I have a special interest in the history of the community, but I also have had a couple of other careers, and one of them was as an editor for different newspapers in the region. And you'll hear a lot from other people about Sharon's volunteer work, right? when I joined the Historical Society board, the first thing I heard is that she's the full-time volunteer. When Kyle talks about getting a book published, we're working on staffing for the Historical Society now. We have grown from a part-time director to 9 to 10 staff people, and we're identifying positions. And one of the things we found when we started doing this effort is that Sharon falls as a board member, she falls as a staffer, because she is a full-time staff person working as the head of our publications department. And that's an amazing task. That's an amazing amount of time to give, because publishing books is hard. But that's not the way that I met Sharon. I actually met Sharon probably more years ago than I'm willing to admit, when I was working as an editor, because I chaired the New Mexico Press Women High School Newspaper Contest. Now, for those of you that have had high school students, you'll know that it really doesn't matter what their chosen activity is. High schools are competitive. So over the course of about 2 weeks after we sent out the notice to the schools in the region, my kitchen table went from being visible as a kitchen table to being heaped higher than I can tell you. My kids were laughing because they couldn't find the table because it was covered with so many high school newspapers. So we plowed through them, we judged them, we read them, we marked them up, and the one that came out so far on top was Sandia High School, and that's how I met Sharon, when I had the pleasure of presenting her with the winning high school newspaper award from New Mexico Press Women. So my thought about Sharon is that while she does all of this volunteer work, and so much of it you'll hear about how she helps preserve the history of our community and how she has worked through the years driving up here. She and I were driving up here from Albuquerque one time at the same time for the board meetings. All of those things are Sharon. But to me, she's a treasure because of the years that she devoted to the children. She is the ultimate teacher. She was just amazing, and her publication was so far above everyone else's that I know that the lives that she impacted when she was teaching are lives that will continue to impact others just based on her influence in their lives. I should say one other thing. Heather knows I'm never shut up. But I did coordinate the nomination for Sharon. And one of the people who wanted desperately to write a letter of recommendation for her was her old classmate, Roger Waterman, who was in his own way a living treasure, but he passed away before the letter got written. I think he would want us to remember him to Sharon today as well.
I have a quick anecdote I want to share before I follow up on what Wendy was saying. My name's Heather Mcclanahan. I'm the former director of the Historical Society, so I had many years of working in the same office with Sharon, which I treasure deeply. Sharon has written a wonderful book that hopefully most of you have read about Peggy Pond Church. And I just want to say that she would still be researching and writing that book if we had not given her a deadline for when she had to give her talk and do the book signing here in the lodge. So that was a 15-year experience of research and writing that, and like I said, she would still be working on it because, and this is following up on what Wendy said, Sharon is probably the most meticulous person I have ever met. I sent out an email one time to 450 odd people, and it said what the event was and where the event was and the date the event was, but it forgot the time. And Sharon came in and she very nicely said to me, don't ever send anything out of this office again that don't have at least 2 pairs of eyes on it. And that was our rule after that. We always had at least 2 pairs of eyes on everything that went out. Historical Society, as a result of Sharon's work, has published amazing books that have won all kinds of awards from local and national organizations. And you know, we wouldn't be able to have done that without her work. The other nice thing about having an office with Sharon is, you know, life is life, and some days I would come in and be pulling my hair out because I had 3 kids that were making me crazy. And she was always like, everything's going to be fine. You're going to get through this. And was just a wonderful, wonderful companion, wonderful friend. And I am so honored to know and call Sharon Snyder a friend.
Certainly there have to be a few more people that would like to come up and say something. Sig?
Thank you, Kyle. First of all, congratulations to all 3 of the treasures at Los Alamos. We're very lucky to have you all. But I just wanted to say a few words about Sharon, since I had the opportunity to write a few words on her behalf. You've already heard the most important things. I mean, she really is a treasure, not only to this community, but to Pajarito Plateau in terms of what she's done. And so we're very lucky to have her. I was particularly lucky to have her help because back about 7 or so years ago, I was finishing up a big book. I was already out at Stanford at that time, and so no direct connection to the laboratory, but I was working on this book about US-Russian collaborations, the nuclear scientists from the 2 countries working together for a couple of decades to try to tackle the problems that arose during the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And let me just jump forward, as I know you're all thinking right now, Soviet Union, Russia, Ukraine. It's a good thing we wrote that book when we did, because half of the articles are written by Russian scientists, and they talked about the importance of working together with the Americans, as we did, to try to avert the nuclear dangers that were brought about by the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So I had all these contributions, and I know it was an enormous amount, and I was trying to get it published. I didn't want to do it through the lab, since I wasn't officially at the lab anymore, although for those of you who care about classification, I did run it through the lab classification. So it did go, that's the contribution the laboratory made. But I wound up with the Historical Society and Sharon. And let me just tell you, I mean, she was absolutely remarkable. I mean, first of all, you know, she had to sort of honcho the entire publication process. And that is to find a printer and go through all of that. And then she herself, in that spirit, you know, if you think about it, a full-time volunteer, you know, what's a full-time volunteer? That's amazing. Well, she was a full-time volunteer. She did, with Eileen Patterson, she did the copy editing of what wound up to be a 1,000-page, 2-volume book that then she, through Bathtub Row Press, managed to get printed and published. And so we now have 2 volumes, 1,000 pages, a book appropriately called Doomed to Cooperate. And the reason that's so important, because today we're going to be doomed if we don't cooperate. And so Sharon helped to bring that along, and she was just fantastic. So a little more than a year ago, I had another book just about ready. And this book is about North Korea, and particularly my visits to North Korea nuclear political situation. And so I was trying to figure out where to get this book published. And of course, I thought right away of Sharon. So I came to talk to Sharon, and of course, her immediate response was, let me take a look at this. She went to the board. She said, we can do this. But then she also told me that you know, with the way things had gone through during the pandemic, it was going to be very difficult to find a printer, get this done. But she said she's going to do this and work it through. I wound up going with Stanford University Press, and they will eventually get the book out, but it's been sort of a difficult process. But it's supposed to, I mean, it's finished. I finished it. It's done. And it'll be published next February. And actually, through the Historical Society, I'm going to give a talk, I think, on January 10th about the book, sort of the preview of the book. But again, it was just amazing. Sharon was ready, step in, roll up her sleeves and get to work. She is a living treasure. Thank you, Sharon, for all your help.
I'm Georgia Strickfadden, a lifelong friend of Sharon's. We went to high school together. We played softball together. She's just a hair older than I am. But, you get our age, it doesn't matter. But one of the great things that she has managed to do that's been important, I think, to our research community in Los Alamos, is she convened a small group of us called the History Nuts. And it's where we could share and encourage each other along on our history research projects. And so she managed to do that, and she still heads that up and reminds us to come, and we do. And there's always something interesting going on. So it is really helpful in a history community to be able to share with each other. And she made that possible for those of us who are actually doing some research. Those who are actually published are the others. I just took all their information and used it as in my tours. I published it verbally, told all these stories. So thank you, Sharon, for being here and for what you do for the history community.
Hi, I'm Denny Erickson. I want to thank Kyle and the Board of Directors for the Living Treasures for the special things they do for this community we call Los Alamos. I'm glad I get to follow Sagan away. You really don't want to follow him, but he's said some things I was going to try and explain, and I don't have to now. I want to read you the mission of his Historical Society, or summarize it. It's in its 6th decade, and its purpose is to preserve, promote, communicate the stories of Los Alamos and its people. And there's no better example of someone that has lived out this mission than Sharon Snyder. She has served as a member of the Board of Directors of the Society for 20-some years. She has served as the Society's publication director and what I think most people would call its executive editor for the Society's press. Thanks to Sharon, now called Bathtub Road Press. She is a wonderful and accomplished storyteller. It's not surprising that, that she is such a person, having been trained and mentored by New Mexico's exquisite storyteller, Tony Hillerman, when she was in college. And she has used that ability to tell the stories of Los Alamos and northern New Mexico, I'd say, across the world in many ways. She's done it over the years with her published stories in our newspapers, in the Society's quarterly reports, the newsletters. And it's already been mentioned that her most important, I'd say personally, and to the Society, was the publication of her biography of Peggy Pond Church, which has won awards, established the publication arm of the Society as noteworthy in the Southwest. As an editor, her capstone contribution or accomplishment, as Sig said, was the publication in 2016 doomed to cooperate. And I thought I'd read the subtitle, which again explains and reinforces what Sig said. How American and Russian scientists joined forces to assist some of the greatest post-war nuclear dangers. This was something that Sig led and made happen, beginning with the dissolution of the Soviet Union some 30 years ago now. This was an effort that expanded and went on for almost 2 decades, was finally ended as President Putin took increasingly control of Russia. It is an unbelievable story, and it's important that this story was put together by Sig and all the collaborators that were part of this effort, but also that it was published. Sig was looking for a publisher, and he was having difficulty finding one. The society, somewhat trembling in the board of directors' decision to offer to publish, stepped forward and kind of took a step off the cliff, if you like, into the unknown. Sharon, in her willingness to do really tough things, came through. As Sig commented, she had to work with Sig and his young staff at Stanford. She had, in fact, had to work with editors at the laboratory, and she had to work with her colleague volunteers within the society, and pulled it off. It is a dramatic story. For those of you that haven't read this, you should read it. In 10 more years, with people like me and other people that were part of this, people will not believe what happened in the 1990s and the early part of the new millennium. So finally, Sharon, I want to commend you for your friendship, for your collegiality, for your impeccable standards, for your storytelling gifts, and for your many distinguished accomplishments as the Society's publication director. I want to say that you are truly deserving of the honor that's about to be bestowed on you as a Los Alamos Living Treasure. And in my opinion, you are a gift to the world. Thank you.
By the way, the Bathtub Road Press books are available for sale in the History Museum, along with a lot of other publications about people who've lived here and some of the interesting things that have been done here, or, you know, people who've written about Bandelier and all sorts of Via Grande, all kinds of interesting things. So if you haven't already been to the History Museum and picked up a book or two, it's time for you to head over there. That's my little plug for them. Well, I don't see anybody else coming forward to say anything, so I'm going to ask Sharon to come up now. Sharon? One of these days, I'm going to ask Sharon to take me for a walk around Los Alamos so she can tell me about the clock in front of the post office and stuff like that. First of all, I forgot to give one of these to Coke Young, but you get one too.
Oh, thank you very much.
Uh-huh. And this is the portrait of Sharon that will be hanging at the Senior Center soon.
Thank you.
This is your
thanks.
pendant, and you get a copy of the portrait.
All right.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that he did such a good job, because I usually hate my picture. But I like this one.
Yeah, Jim's really good at what he does. And then you have this certificate. So
Thank you.
please say a few words if you'd like to.
Sure. Well, since we've been talking about doing to cooperate, I'd like to say a few things on that. Before I ever met Sig, I had really admired him for his job as the director here. And it never occurred to me that I would even shake his hand, much less become his friend. And that's been a real honor. He was amazing to work with. Denny brought me the first thing I knew about the possible book, and it outlined what the book would be about. And I thought at the moment, we absolutely must do this book. It was too important not to do it. And I will say it was hard work. I spent many nights up until 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning editing, but it was worth it. And that may be the best thing I've ever done in my life. So I want to thank Sink for that opportunity. I would like to just read a few words. I know I'll leave something out if I don't. I never thought to be here receiving such an award for doing things that I love to do. When I arrived in Los Alamos at 12 years old, I knew that this was an amazing place and a great place to live. I've always been grateful that my father took a job at the lab and moved us here. Like most Los Alamos graduates, I went away to college, and after graduating, I took a teaching job in Albuquerque. And so I didn't come back for quite some time. It wasn't until I retired from teaching that something began to pull me back here. But two people who definitely responsible for my return. Hetty Dunn got me interested in working in the Historical Society. I drove back and forth from Rio Rancho, where I lived at the time, for a few years to attend events and finally become a board member. But it was Heather Mcclanahan who said one day, "Why don't you just move back up here?" And so I did, and that was probably the best decision I made for myself. I want to thank all of you. I couldn't be in a better community with better friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, that sounds good. Okay. When I interviewed Pat Saran, I was amazed at the many ways he has had an impact on our town. One that many people are probably not aware of. He also believes that it doesn't really matter who gets the credit as long as the task gets done. He has made long-term commitments to many organizations, such as being the Santa each year at the Big Pancake Breakfast fundraiser for Kiwanis, and being the chief pyrotechnic for the Kiwanis 4th of July fireworks show every year at Overlook Park, except for a few years when we couldn't do it. These are just a few examples of his many deeds. And I know there are a number of people here who would like to share a bit of their experience with Pat. So I'd like to invite them to come up and share a few memories. So like with before, please come on up and fill the chairs and start doing your thing. Cindy, you want to start?
What an honor it is to be here today, to honor Pat and also the other nominees I appreciate your comment about all of us being treasures, but some of you are really, really special. The 3 nominees and also the people who have already been nominated. And I know several of you are here, and I look at that list, and it's just humbling to realize what a wonderful community we live in. But I want to speak to Pat Saran. I may be young. I heard the comments about knowing someone since you were in school together. I've only lived in Los Alamos for 25 years, and I've only known Pat for about 10 of those years. But in those first 15 years where I didn't know Pat, he was still bringing joy to me and my family, because we went to Rover Park for what I think is one of the most magnificent things that happens in our community, that 4th of July fireworks that brings the community together, and then we have those explosions in the sky, and he was integral to that. He was also integral to the Breakfast with Santa pancake breakfasts by the Kiwanis Club. And my children and many other children brought their hopes and dreams, sometimes some challenging requests, to a very patient Santa to listen to them and to encourage them and their families along the way. Also, we moved to White Rock, and there was Rocket Park and Submarine Park that shortly after we moved here were renovated and were made safer by Pat and his family's actions. And so I just want to share that even before I knew him, he had an impact on my life and on the lives of many others. And he brings joy in all of those activities. And I can look at him now, and that just seeing that smiling face brings joy to me. I first met Pat when I was serving on the United Way board, and we needed to have chairs for our fundraising campaign. And someone suggested that they were going to approach Pat and Ann to be our co-chairs. And I had heard their names around town, but I didn't know them. And what I saw from them for the first time they joined us is this spirit of, we're here to help. We're not just going to be there for the pictures, okay? We're gonna go out and do what needs to be done, whether it's the fundraising, whether it's getting to know the organizations that we're trying to get involved and get funds for. And he and Ann served on that committee for a number of years, helping us to understand the needs of northern New Mexico and try to find funds to assist in those many needs. And that ripple effect that was talked about earlier, I see in the work of the United Way. He and I also had the privilege of serving on the Los Alamos Community Foundation Board together. And on that board, we are committed to serving all nonprofits in this community. And once again, we were a new organization, we were a new board, and we were trying to see what our next steps were. And Pat was that man of action that said, let's do something. Let's see if this is really going to work. And in my role as the chancellor at UNM Los Alamos at the time, I was the beneficiary of that. Because Pat and Ann, and I jokingly say, without me asking, came and said, we'd like to make and create an endowment at the Los Alamos Community Foundation and make it benefit UNM Los Alamos. And we're willing to start that endowment with a significant donation. But we also want to provide matching funds so that others will also see the value of this hidden gem, is what UNMLA was often called at that time, in our community. And so we had people who had never donated to UNM Los Alamos making a donation to that. When we received our first reward from that endowment account, it was about $500. It's not overwhelming, but it purchased something that was really important to Pat and I. Welding helmets that automatically dim. And so if you know Pat, you know that he appreciates the welding. If you know our programs for the students and the difference it makes, though that was an important contribution. During the pandemic, we used funds from that endowment to buy laptops for students that didn't have access to those laptops. And so I really appreciate what they've done. If I say he has a volunteer spirit and the willingness to step up, I have another story to share. I was with a table that Pat and Ann were there at the YMCA benefit. And I often, in my role with UNM Los Alamos, also do some things with UNM Taos. And I was sharing with them that I had just gone to an event with UNM Taos, and they had a ceremonial mace. And most people say, what is a ceremonial mace? If you think back to any university graduation that you've been to, it is a long, formal stick that we carry in, during the procession as we walk in, and it looks really nice. And they had one and we didn't. And I was just kind of mentioning that in February. By May graduation, Pat, who has incredible woodworking skills, had provided us with a ceremonial mace. And I brought a picture. If you haven't seen Pat in his regalia, okay? So notice Pat and notice the beautiful ceremonial mace. This is the thing I love about Pat. I was not saying, Pat, would you make a ceremonial mace for us? I was simply saying, oh, I noticed that UNM Taos has one. And Pat has that ability to take that idea and make things happen. He steps forward in small ways and large ways consistently. I mentioned to someone recently that if you're going to have an advisory board, you really like to have people on your board that help out. And I know that Heather would feel the same way. When Pat first joined the advisory board at UNM Los Alamos, he came to my office, we talked about the campus, and the overwhelming theme of his questions is, how can I help? How can I help this university serve this community and the students in this area? There's a lot of advisory board members and board members, myself included, that don't always have that same humbleness of objectives. And it was incredibly appreciated. Many of you remember the mill levy campaigns in Los Alamos. Our university used to be heavily supported by the state, and state funding continued to be cut. 2008, we did a mill levy campaign. It was unsuccessful. 2013, we did a mill levy campaign. Pat and many of you that I recognize in this room were involved in that, and the campus got close. And then we were struggling to know how we were going to survive. And I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but those of us who were internal knew that we weren't sure that UNM Los Alamos could continue to survive, because as a community college, you can't simply raise tuition. That's not the right thing to do. State funding was limited. Perception of state legislators was, Los Alamos is a wealthy community, they should support you with a mill levy. And yet we knew we had failed twice. And our board, which included Pat, became mobilized. And they did the work. He knocked on doors. He met with people. He wrote letters. He helped us pass. I can tell you they were all great. We passed with 67% of the votes. And so we're here, we're strong. And a lot of the reasons why organizations survive is because of leaders, people who are willing to step forward at any point and do anything that's needed. And I just so appreciate that one. So in my comments today, I tried to convey that he is a man that conveys joy and provides joy to us in so many ways. He is a volunteer who steps forward, both in big ways and in small ways, to help organizations. And the third thing is he inspires us. He inspires us to be better people. He inspires us to be better organization. He inspires us to go to meetings. If we organize a meeting and say, oh, can we all get together at 10 o'clock for a subcommittee of such and such board meeting? He'll say, I'm mowing the grass at the I don't know if you know this, but he mows the grass at the golf course in town. And so he may say, if you can move it to like 10:30, I can be there. Because if at any point he can be there, he wants to be there. He's not going to use mowing the grass or something else as an excuse. And so, Pat, just thank you for the joy. Thank you for the volunteer spirit, and thank you for inspiring all of us.
Hi, my name is Dave. I've been lucky enough to be Pat's son for the past God knows how many years. I don't want to rehash all the accomplishments. We can all read those, but well, first off, I'm going to try to get through this without breaking down, but there are 3 words that I would use to describe my dad. One is love, one is passion, and one is integrity. He's been an amazingly loving and wonderful father for my 47 years here. And he does everything with love. He wants people to feel love, he wants friends to feel love, and he just shares himself constantly. The other word was passion, and my dad does everything with a passion. He doesn't half-ass anything. He does it all the way, no matter what it is. Making signs for the golf course, mowing yards, UNMLA, everything he decides to do, he does it full-heartedly. And that's been an inspiration for my life and for my children's lives, and I think for some of us here as well. And the last thing to add is he's a man of amazing integrity. He always does the right thing, no matter what. An anecdote that came up this afternoon was, I remember I was a small kid and we were playing golf, and I can't remember who we were playing with, but the gentleman came over and he told me a story about my dad in a golf tournament, how he was winning the tournament and he committed a small little infraction. Nobody saw, nobody would have noticed, but he gave himself 2 penalty strokes because that was the rule. And he lost the golf tournament. And it's something that always struck me as he's such a special person because he always does the right thing, even when no one's looking. And I think that should be an inspiration for all of us. So I'm so proud to be here with you, Dad. I love you so much.
Sure, here. I'm Leslie Hayes, and I'm here because my mom is married to Pat. And my mom and Pat met right after my daughter was born, and she was the first grandchild, and she was very excited. And I thought I would see her constantly, and instead she kind of disappeared. And she was enthusiastic when she came, but I was a little puzzled that she wasn't like constantly there. And finally, after about a couple months, my sister said to me, "Did you know Mom has a boyfriend?" And I was like, "Oh, that would explain it." And we met Pat, and we were all enchanted by him and liked him a lot. And people have talked about, how Pat does things with commitment and joy, and he's always just reached out and been so kind to everyone. And I think that's one of the reasons he's able to accomplish so much. For 5 years, every Christmas, Pat forgot the orange juice and had to go get the orange juice, and Santa Claus would come. And, Santa Claus would give my kids presents, and then Santa would leave, and eventually Pat would come with the orange juice. And it was such a moment of joy and delight for my kids, and eventually they figured out it was Grandpa, and then they were so excited to be part of the secret. And so we went to Kiwanis every time they had the Kiwanis Santa, and the kids helped out because they were just, they'd been given this gift by Pat and they wanted to help repay it. We went to the foster kids with Santa, and the same thing with the fireworks. We got to go and experience the fireworks, and so as soon as they got old enough, the kids wanted to give back. And so Pat just has this thing about him that he gives so much and so generously that he makes the rest of us want to give back as well, and he just makes the world a better place for being in it. Thank you, Pat.
Well, in keeping with the theme of the children, my name's Denise Saran Brown, and I got a chance to grow up here, at least for a little while. Then he took me off to places. I've basically been following him my whole life. But one of the things I was really excited about when my parents moved back to Los Alamos was that they were going to be able to kind of get back into what I really think is an absolutely exceptional community. And then unfortunately, we lost my mom really shortly thereafter. And I think he could have decided to just kind of retreat into a shell, which would have been completely reasonable. But instead, he took all of that joy that my mom and dad shared and the love that they had for the community, and he just kind of poured it out to everyone else. And so he decided that we would do the tot lots. And we used to go to San Ildefonso, which, let's all be honest, should be named Dinosaur Park, was our favorite one. And so he had this idea that in my mom's memory, we would renovate this park. And then that just led to a whole cascade of a whole lot of other really cool things. And you're right, he is a man of passion, and he likes to also buy all of the equipment. So if you ever need anything, Chances are it's hiding in his garage. But he did the tot lots, and then after he finished that, he was like, what can I do next? And so I think as a frustrated nuclear engineer, you always want to blow stuff up, and that's how he started doing the fireworks, which has got to be the world's most over-engineered fireworks display on the planet Earth. I mean, it really is truly amazing, the redundancy of safety efforts that they put in place. But that brought him so much fun, and you'd hear him, I'd be like, my God, you're up at 4 in the morning squibbing these fireworks. But you could tell, even while he was kind of complaining, he was really knowing that so many people were going to be enjoying the fruit of his labors. And I think you're right, he's kind of like the Pied Piper. They had this really funny little thing in their guest bathroom, and it's Dad in his Kiwanis outfit with his little flute, and all of the folks are kind of running along behind him, because you are absolutely what a servant leader is all about. You go first, you do the work, and then everyone else wants to follow. And so it has been an absolute inspiration to me, to my brother Dave, and I think to a lot of people in the room. Whether you're driving a golf tractor, or you're blowing up stuff, or people are sitting on your lap as Santa Claus, like, you're always there, and you do. You have such a joy and a happy smile, and a Buddha belly, and we love you for all of those things. You're the greatest. Mwah.
Is there anybody else who wants to come up and say a few remarks about Pat? Okay, well then it's Pat's turn to come up. And I'll show you the picture of Pat.
That's when I still have hair? No.
So that'll be hanging in the senior center pretty soon. But you're going to have a copy for your home, or your garage, whatever you decide to do. I know that's one of the most important rooms in the house. At least in our house it is. And evidence that you're a living treasure. Okay, these are what they get.
They told me I had to live till tonight, so I would be moving.
Absolutely. And then of course the pendant. Okay, so those are for you. And I'd like it if you would just come to the podium and say a few remarks if you would like.
Put my water down here. Well, this is pretty neat. All these people saying all these nice things about me, and I'm not even dead. I know a lot of you went to a lot of effort and expense to get here, so thank you very much for doing that and for honoring all of us. To my wonderful wife Ann and my extended family who have helped and supported me all these years, thank you very much. As Denise said, I got involved in the nonprofit world due to a sort of a tragedy in my life. I was 55 years old, and I kind of said to myself, well, Pat, what are your values? Well, I'm an engineer. Values, I really don't know this variable. I got educated, got married, had children, and wanted to make the best for my family. But I really had to, at this point in my life, I had to address this thing called values. So after some thought and whatnot, I came up with my values acronym. So F was sort of faith in myself that I could do something if I put my mind to it. Faith that I could work with other people to accomplish something. L for levity. I've never really taken myself too seriously. I've worked on the other side of the bridge, and I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. The women in my life are smarter than me. That's not their fault. So I said, you got to learn to listen with your ears. So we got that. A for acceptance. I try not to be judgmental. I try to take people as they are. This other one, I'm a male.
This may come as a shock to the females in the crowd, but sometimes males like to be controlling. That's still a work in progress. And then finally, G, for gratitude. Gratitude for what I had and what I have. And it was time to share this gratitude. So with my flag, I got into it. Like I say, we worked on the tot lots. In 10 years, we rebuilt all of the tot lots in town. And another wonderful lady, Dina DeGanchi, we started the Lunch Buddies program. We grew that to 125 adults having lunch with caring kids that needed some self-esteem. After it got to 125 people, it was a full-time job, so we turned it over to Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Worked in the area of domestic violence for a number of years, and that was at the Crisis Center of Northern New Mexico. And that was too emotional for me. After 10 years, I had to surrender. Ann and I became involved in the United Way, and we started doing some of the program reviews. And then one year, Christy Ortega, who was the executive director at the time, we asked her if she would schedule meetings with the various agencies that we were serving. And Ann and I visited these people, and we really got a first-hand view of what so many people do so much with so little. So it was really a tremendous and eye-opening experience for us. Along the way, I got to spend a lot of good time with my Kiwanian friends. We blew up stuff, and I played Santa Claus. I kind of figured out that I got to blow up about 70,000 explosives, and I had about 4,000 kids sit on my lap and tell me what they wanted for Christmas. My one regret with all of that was that I didn't write it down. I didn't I was too lazy to do that, I guess, but it was quite an experience. So, and that was good. And then finally, as Cindy said, I got to serve on the UNM LA Advisory Board. And really, we have another wonderful gem in that. Well, along the way, when I was participating in these things, I noticed that all of our nonprofits really live paycheck to paycheck. And they really have no sustainability, and that kind of bothered me. And Don Cobb and David Israelovitz had established the Los Alamos Community Foundation. And I asked David if I could come aboard and participate in the Los Alamos Community Foundation. And that's where I'm at today. I really believe strongly in our community foundation, and I support it strongly. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, for those of you who are involved in nonprofits, I thank you very much. If you're not involved, you might consider it. I'm sure you would bring an asset to the table. And third, if you're not involved in either of those two, I invite you to take out your checkbook or your RMD and help support the Los Alamos Community Foundation. So, in conclusion, my bucket list is really short. I want to see all of my grandchildren graduate from college. I would like to see the Los Alamos Community Foundation have $5 million in assets. And finally, I would like to play 18 holes of golf and have less than 30 putts. So, you're going to live forever. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for this wonderful honor. Thank you.
So as part of our virus safety measures, the reception is a bit different this year. In the Curtis room, the one right over here, you'll find a box of light refreshments, and they're all identified as to whether they're vegetarian or pork or whatever's in them. So we invite you to gather in small groups, particularly those of you who didn't get up here to share, but we invite you to spend some time with the treasure in your life and share a little bit with them directly. And there are some tables out here under the portal. and the patio, and it looked like the sun even came out, at least enough to dry things off. So that concludes our program, and we hope you'll stay, get some refreshments, and mingle a bit with other people. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming.